Well, one of the more closely watched constituencies of the election could be Watford. It has elected an MP from the party which formed the government in every general election since 1974. In 2010, the Conservatives took the seat from Labour. Let's go to Watford. My colleague Jane Hill is there for us. Jane.
Hello again, good afternoon, Maxine from Watford, and exactly as you were outlining there, it's going to be an interesting one to watch on May the 7th. Before we talk to another of the candidates who's standing here at this general election, just to remind you of some of those key facts. You touched on it there, but that is why, one of the reasons it's an interesting place to watch, because the people of this town have voted for the MP that represents what turns out to be the winning party at every single general election since 1974, taking us right back to the days of Ted Heath. It's quite a complex political area as well, though. You mentioned that at the last general election, the people voted in a Conservative MP, Richard Harrington. But this town has a mayor as well, a directly elected mayor, and she is a Liberal Democrat, Dorothy Thornhill. You may have seen us talking to her in the last hour, in fact, because she's standing for the parliamentary elections this year. And if we look at the results of last year's European elections, again, a different flavour comes through, because there was very strong voting for both Labour and UKIP at those elections. So really quite a mixed political bag. Let's find out what the Green Party candidate makes of it all. Aidan Cottrell-Boyce has joined me. Hello to you.
Hi, how are you?
And what are people saying to you on the doorstep? What are the key issues for them here in this constituency?
Well, I think Watford is one of those constituencies that's really borne the brunt of a lot of the very, very misguided austerity policies of the coalition government. We've got a hospital that's just picking itself up after a pretty disastrous CQC report, Care Quality Commission report. We've got a shortage of school places in a town which is only a few miles away from London, where in some boroughs there's a surplus of school places, which is, you know, testimony to the fact that the academy experiment that this government's introduced leads to a fractured and haphazard system of education provision. And I think what they're really looking for is an alternative. And I think more and more people are realising the fact that austerity measures are damaging to communities, are damaging to society as a whole, and are economically illiterate. They're not necessary whatsoever, and they actually hamper the growth of the economy. So I think when you start to talk to people about those kind of issues, the green sort of policy is really resonating with them.
But then how many of them come back to you and say, yes, but you're just not big enough to form a government, and therefore, even if I agree with everything you've just said to me, how can my vote really make any difference?
I think this is probably something that resonates with every single Green candidate up and down the country. The fact that everywhere you go, people will say to you, I want to vote Green, your policies make the most sense, your policies have the most intellectual rigour, but I can't vote for you. And I think it's an unusual thing for politicians to say, but I think the electorate has a responsibility to vote for who they think has the best ideas. You know, you have if you're a citizen of a democracy, you have an active role, not a passive role. You should be voting for who you think is right, not who you think has the most chance in terms of elections. If everybody in this country did that, I think the Greens would have a landslide.
That's not realpolitik, though, is it? It's not broadly, not how it works.
Well, I think, you know, we need to mobilise people. We need to make sure that the message gets out there. If you vote for who you want, who you think has the best ideas, then there's enough kindred spirits in this country to make it happen.
What about the impact of the television leader debates that people have been watching? I mean, millions of people watching them on national television. Do you get a sense from the doorstep that has changed things for you, that there's more awareness, that they've seen Natalie Bennett, they've seen your leader, that they're a little bit more aware of the Greens on a national platform? Do you feel it's made a difference?
I think there was a degree of kind of scepticism about the Greens and about Natalie Bennett as a person from the right-wing media in general in the lead-up to the debates. I think a lot of people were waiting for her to make a mistake or do something wrong, and I think afterwards the sort of broad consensus was that she did very well. And I think the overwhelming consensus is that all the female leaders did very well, and certainly Nigel Farage and Ed Miliband probably did less well.
The Liberal Democrat candidate who I mentioned there, we spoke to in the last hour, said that there's always likely to be an element of tactical voting. Do you feel that's particularly on such a very tight election as this general election is, that there is always going to be an element of that?
I hope not, because I don't think that's democracy. I think if you're voting tactically, then you're not playing an active role in your democracy. You should be voting with your heart, you should be voting with your convictions, you should be voting for who you think has the right ideas for the future of the country. That's what your role is as a Democrat, that's what your role as a citizen in democracy is.
Aidan Cottrell-Boyce, very good of you to come and join us here. Thank you very much
Thank you.
indeed. Thanks for being with us. And just to remind you, and here on the screen, a list, of course, of all the candidates standing in this constituency. We will be talking to all of them over the course of the afternoon, and in some hours we'll also be reflecting a little bit more about jobs, unemployment, the economy and business, the views of business here in Watford as well. We'll have more in the next hour. Maxine, for now, back to you.
Jane, thank you very much. Jane Hill there. Plenty